Hello, CP Pre-Calc. What we're doing today is we are preparing ourselves for the quiz. So your Trig Identity Verification quiz was posted today, and it is not due until Wednesday at 8 p.m. at night. You are allowed to work with your peers. You are allowed to video chat and problem solve together. I encourage it. But what I want to make sure is that you remember some of the strategies to help you be successful on this assessment. So I'm going to go over like 4 problems today and 4 tomorrow, and this is like an 8-problem quiz that's going to make sure it covers the strategies that you need to be successful on your quiz. Obviously not the same problems, but every strategy that I go over will be a strategy that you're going to have to utilize on that quiz. So let's first talk about the strategies that help us out. Let's take a look. What strategies can we use to help us on this quiz? So some of the strategies we talked about, things we can do. One thing we can do is we can factor. Another thing we can do is we can simplify. Meaning if you can like multiply things or bring things together, that's a strategy. Another strategy is our Pythagorean identities. And where are they, guys? They're right here on your blue sheet. These 9 identities are your Pythagorean identities. We really have 3. We really have 1, 2, 3 Pythagorean identities. The other 6 are just manipulations of the 3 Pythagorean identities, but these 9 right here will help you simplify using Pythagorean identities. Another strategy that's very helpful is when in doubt, change everything to sine and cosine. And again, use your sheet. Everything can be written in sine and cosine. Tangent can be written as sine over cosine. Cosecant can be 1 over sine. Secant can be 1 over cosine. Cotangent is cosine over sine. That is a great strategy. Change everything to sine and cosine. You can't figure out what to do. Change it to sine and cosine. So these are strategies that we want to do to help ourselves out. Another one, when it's simplifying, I'm just going to put here next to it, we can add, subtract, multiply, or divide to help us there. I mean, that's what I mean by simplify. All right, guys? These are strategies that we can utilize to help ourselves out. All right? And another strategy is to get rid of the fraction sometimes helps. So those are our strategies that can really help us out. So let's talk. Let me give you a couple examples. Let's start with one. Remember, I'm just giving you strategies that are going to help us out. Let's start with this one. Tangent theta, cotangent theta equals 1. Now this is one, right off the bat, I can't factor. Multiplying and adding right now, I don't see anything that I could do. I don't see a Pythagorean identity. Guys, hints with the Pythagorean identities is when you look at the Pythagorean identities, you have a trig function squared and a 1, or 2 trig functions squared. If you don't have a trig function squared, you're not going to utilize your Pythagorean identities. So let's see, can I change everything to sine and cosine? Now, just so you know, you need to show steps. So if I look at tangent and cotangent, I can use that strategy. And I'm going to show you 2 ways you could have approached this. If I use that strategy, tan is sine over cosine, cotangent and cosine over sine. I can use that strategy. Remember, when we verify we don't cross the line, we make the left look like the right if we're sticking with the left. Right here, we can now see sines cancel out and cosines cancel out, and that simplifies to 1. You need to show the canceling out. You need to show this in order to get credit. You can't just write 1. I need to see that you understand why. Now, another way you could have approached this, which would have been also 100% correct, would be if you took a look at your trig identity sheet and you saw that, wait a minute, cotangent is the same, where is it? Cotangent is the same as 1 over tangent. You could have wrote this, but again, you have to show it. You can't just tell me it works. You have to verify by showing, wait, I can change cotangent to 1 over tan, and the tans can cancel out, and that's 1. Both of those would give you 100% credit on an assessment. Now, be aware that you need to show the work, the canceling out. You have to show it. You have to rewrite it and show the canceling out for full credit on your quiz. All right? So that's one type of example you might have to work with. So let's take a look at another type of example that you might have to work with. Now, here's one that we want to take a look at. Let me just get the one I want. So we are going to do this one now. Let's do this one. Here's another one that, we want to take a look at. Now, when we take a look at this one, what I notice is I see a secant squared and a 1. Right away, when I see a trig function squared, I want to go to my Pythagorean identities. So if I look at this blue sheet, and you take a look here, you can see right here, secant squared minus 1. What is that equivalent to? Well, that's equivalent to tangent squared. So right off the bat, I'm going to be working with my left, and I see that I can input a tangent squared for that secant squared minus 1. Anytime you see that trig function squared and a minus 1, it's a great idea to see if a Pythagorean identity can help you. And right now, I see that I can change this to tangent squared theta. Now, let's talk about that. Cotangent and tangent. Let's think of what I just did in the previous one. What did we say cotangent is the same as? It's the same as 1 over tangent. The only difference is if you have it squared, it'll be the same as 1 over tangent squared theta. And that'll be times tangent squared theta. What happens here, guys? Same thing on numerator and denominator, they cancel. I verified with 1. Make sure you show that verification process. Show that canceling out and show that it's equivalent to 1. So whenever you see a 1 and a trig identity squared, look for a Pythagorean identity. That is a great strategy. These are strategies that you need to utilize on your quiz. All right, guys? Okay, I'm going to go over 2 more strategies. And remember, I'm going to do more strategies on tomorrow's review too, since you have a couple days to complete this. All right, so the next strategy I'm going to look at is something like this, where if we take a look at a problem, and I gave you cosine theta times cosecant squared theta minus cosine theta, and I wanted to show that it equals cotangent cubed theta times sine theta. That's what I want to show. So let's take a look at that. Let's look at our strategies. Let's talk about the strategies that I just used. Now, if I look at the strategies that I just used, just listed. If I look at these strategies that I just listed, the first one is factor. And if I look at this, I can factor the left side of this example because I have a common factor of cosine. So let's start there. Factor out that common factor of cosine. Now, if I factor that out, here I'm left with cosecant squared theta minus cosine's here. If I take out the cosine, I still have a 1. 1 is a factor of everything. Remember that. 1 is a factor of everything. So right now I have a cosine. But now I have this cosecant squared minus 1. Well, I want to figure out what I could do. Well, if I see a cosecant squared minus 1, remember, a trig function and a 1, I'm going to go here. So let's take a look. I have cosecant squared minus 1. What is that equivalent to? It's equivalent to cotangent squared. So right now I have cosine theta times cotangent squared theta. All right, but I want a cotangent cubed. I have a cotangent squared and a cosine, and I want a cotangent cubed. Now, if I want a cotangent cubed, remember, cotangent is the same as cosine over sine. That means I need this cosine to be divided by sine to get a third cotangent. Well, let's think about that. How can I get a sine in the bottom here? I can multiply my numerator and my denominator by sine theta. Now, the reason I can do that, anything over itself is 1. So now if I do this, I can leave my sine there, and I can rewrite this. I can bring this cosine over, sine over here, and write cosine theta over sine theta times cotangent squared theta times sine theta. Well, cosine over sine then would just be cotangent. Now instead of, if I look at this cotangent theta times cotangent squared theta, that would be cotangent cubed theta times sine theta. I have the same thing on both sides. Now I am verified. The one thing I want you to be careful here is the only reason I can multiply by sine theta over sine theta is I'm multiplying the numerator and the denominator by the same value. All right? You can only do that because it's the same as multiplying by 1. It does not change the value of my trig identity. So I just want us to be aware of that. All right, guys? So now the next thing, there's only one more problem that I'm going to go over today, and then we're going to kind of leave it there. And that means tomorrow we will go over more concepts with you. All right, guys? So the last thing I'm going to go over, and we take a look at this, is going to be tangent squared theta over secant theta equals sine theta tangent theta. Now, what we want to do here is when we take a look at this, I see tangent squared theta over secant theta. If I want to simplify that side, I do not think I want to expand it to a trig identity because I don't want to add that addition or subtraction sign. So in an example like this, when you don't want to add an addition or subtraction sign, your best strategy is to go to sine and cosine and cancel out what we can. Tangent squared theta is the same as sine squared theta over cosine squared theta because our tangent is equivalent to sine over cosine. Secant is the same as 1 over cosine theta, which is what we have here. If we look at secant is 1 over cosine. What you're going to do now is when we have an improper fraction, you need to do keep, change, flip. So you're going to keep the numerator the same, change the division to multiplication, and multiply by the reciprocal of that denominator. By doing that, one of the cosines would cancel out, and I'm left with a sine squared theta over cosine theta. Now be careful, that can be separated out because I want sine and tan. If that can be separated out, it can be separated to sine theta times sine theta cosine theta, which is the same as, if I go over sine theta, this here, that sine theta cosine theta is the same as tangent theta. All right, guys, that's 4 review problems to help you start the quiz. I will have 4 additional review problems posted tomorrow so that you will be able to understand all the concepts that are covered on the quiz. If you want hints, please come to my office hours and I can give you a couple hints on your trig identities and directions in which to go. And also work with your peers. Do a video conference. That is okay. All right? Remember, it's due 8 p.m. on Wednesday night, so you have ample time. All right, guys, hope to see you all in video conference on Canvas. All right, bye.